Greetings, adventurers, and welcome to the Loot Goblin Marketplace. Whenever you see an RPG horror story, it's easy to forget that those stories are usually a compilation of all the ugliest moments presented as if they were occurring back to back. While you as the viewer may be able to read the story over the course of 20 minutes, that story unraveled over the course of weeks, if not months. There may have even been plenty of good moments that initially made the players ignore the bad until one day someone who was secretly miserable decides to lash out. Many of those times, the crash out is valid, but sadly at that point, the campaign ends all the same. That is why it is important to always be open and honest with people at your table. There have been times on this channel where an awful situation would still have a campaign with players excited to play each session, and it makes me sad to think about what might have been had the problem player been dealt with earlier at the table. Today, I got a fun story with a rocky start that was submitted to lootgoblinstories@gmail.com. But first, you may have noticed some of the beautiful ambient music that I use in my videos. That work was done by Tavern Cat Records, who has recently opened up his commissions. Making music is how he pays his bills. So if you need music for your next campaign or your personal stream, please check out the link in the description. Any and all work will be greatly appreciated, and I'll be getting a few more pieces of music for the channel. Now back to the video. Today's treasure goes by the name The Good, The Bad, and The Great. Hello, I just want to open up with a quick thank you for putting out the content you do. It's really helped me with contextualizing my own attempts at GMing and how I can go about playing the game better as a whole, both GMing and being a player. Hey man, I appreciate you supporting the channel. Let's start with the first one called The Bad. Overexcited DM bites off more than he can chew. Growing up, I didn't really get a chance to play D&D until my late teens. Those friends never really took it seriously, though we were a bunch of young adults in the range of 16 to 18, and so I never really thought it was anything to be too upset about. Very quickly, I had immediate desires to run entire campaigns and settings that I couldn't fully put to paper and play because I had no experience, and I had found some of the rules to be a bit too weird for me, like how the storytelling of combat should be presented. Anyway, fast forward to maybe a year after I tried to pick up GMing, and I was told I wasn't the best at it yet, but not for a lack of trying. My buddy said he had a group of people that wanted to play and needed a GM. I immediately offered to take over the campaign as I hadn't ever gotten a chance to play actual D&D outside of the goofy little attempts we tried before. The twist? It was an 8-person party for a first-time GM, 2 veterans and 6 inexperienced players. I don't remember the exacts on who the players were playing, as it's been almost a decade at this point since this campaign, so I'm going to have to refer to them by their names. The first session was a combination of Session 0 and the actual start. I asked the veteran players to help out the new players build characters since I had no experience with the subject, which went off without a hitch. Once things were settled and food was acquired, we started the campaign off with the very generic opener of, you all receive a letter requesting your assistance with missing citizens of a local town, and quickly escorted the players to a mansion that the citizens were stating had something going on in it. Once the players entered the mansion, they could feel themselves unable to leave the mansion's perimeter, and that forced them to push onward. Once they entered, the inside seemed a little larger than the outside despite it being a mansion. The Grand Hall had multiple hallways for them to walk down with dozens of nondescript wooden doors and brass handles, and a stairwell in front of them that led up to a ballroom of sorts. Upon entering, the party was greeted by the most obvious vampire-looking guy you could imagine, complete with bats flying out of the massive ornate door at the top of the stairs mentioned prior, and speaking with a thick accent. The players, if I remember correctly, wasted no time in trying to take him down, thinking he was the cause of the missing people. He wasn't. Turns out he was just some dude who found some clothes lying around, who decided it'd be fun to try and make friends with the party who, to his utter dismay, thought it wasn't funny. He tells them that people just walk around and get lost, that the mansion keeps shifting around without him knowing how it really worked. From there, everything fell into place. The party progressed onward, getting into dungeon crawl-esque shenanigans in rooms that I could pull randomly from my own head. About 2 sessions in at this point, the party finally got to the heart of it all, the big bad evil guy, so to speak, of the scenario I was creating off the cuff, a gnome wizard who claimed this was his domain to take care of and that anyone who trespassed would be killed. Commenced big fight. It didn't take too long for the guy to go down, and we were all goofing around about how he would be killed. Once he was defeated, the entire mansion shook violently, leading to a very short cutscene of a different wizard whose pocket the party and a few other things poured out of. The party got a laugh, and some liked the idea if I remember right. Not to toot toot my own horn. I proceeded to go into detail about how he was freaking out and dipped out, leaving behind a clue for where the party would go to chase after him. Honestly, that does sound like a pretty fun and lighthearted beginning of a story. Yeah, you did the cutscene thing where the big bad evil guy gets away and the party doesn't really get a chance to do anything, but I think early on and with the starter party, that's totally fine. As long as you have a group that doesn't feel like they got cheated and instead had a fun moment, you really can't go wrong here. I'm really curious to see how the story progresses, so let's just jump right into it. The next session picked up and the party went towards a new town, a port city where they could interact with some locals and gather some materials. This is kind of where it started to fall apart. At this point, outside the campaign, I made a stand-in NPC for me to also maybe play a little bit, or at least have saved in my back pocket for the eventual chance he would be played at someone's campaign. This never happened, but no big deal. The party had split up in town to look for what they needed, specifically looking for a ship to get to an island that the party found out belonged to the wizard whose pocket they fell out of. One party member, Dave, went to a shop to get a boat with another member of the party. Dave was playing a tiefling with wings, though I don't remember his class. The boat shop owner was giving them some slack, and so Dave decided to try and rough him up, as well as snag a potion or two in the store. I don't remember the reason why, but around this time, my party had made the comment that there wasn't enough racism or reactions to them in the campaign, since most of the party was composed of races that weren't common, so that may have been part of it. Anyway, my stand-in came to help out the party, as he knew how to get to the tower, but upon hearing this, Dave decided to snag the character by the ear and fly him out to the tower. Not the biggest deal, though I don't recall it really standing well with me, as now I had to round up the rest of the party and come up with a way for them to group up back with Dave. The party gets to Dave and finds him with the character tied up and horribly bruised. Some of the party in character give him a little slack before untying him. He manages to get the party into the tower safely and up to the top. In the center room sat a crown and a number of other items around the room. Not to keep putting him down, but I think it may have been Dave, as he at this point was a bit of a troublemaker. He touched it, causing the entire party to fall into a trap and brought them into another plane. At this point, we took a small break since I was slowly losing interest in GMing, but we managed to squeeze out one more session with the party. In between the break, I'd cooked up an idea of a kingdom of doppelgangers, each one of them trying to mimic some type of role, i.e. a baker, a farmer, a blacksmith. Each and every one of them had something off, each interacting with the party like some type of animatronic from Disney or Universal, just repeating the same one line with no actual capabilities. In the center of the kingdom, in the mountain, was a massive castle that looked like it was shaped out of stalagmites, picked at and shaped over the centuries. The party entered it to no fanfare since there were no guards, to a single massive room with a throne made of stone in the center. Beneath it, they find the NPC I had made the entire kingdom for, a doppelganger who was trying to find his own identity. With paintings and pictures, it would try to piece together its own image, but failing each time as it would keep losing shape. After a small introduction, Dave immediately attempted to kill the NPC. At this point, I remember being absolutely fed up with Dave, quickly putting my stand-in in the limelight by putting his rapier at Dave's neck and saying both in and out of character, no. Afterwards, I don't remember exactly what happened, but there was a lot of drama outside the campaign on top of me not wanting to GM for the 8-person party anymore. I just stepped away and got hassled by one of the players over it. Regardless of that, we never went back to the campaign and kinda gave up on the idea as a whole. This has thankfully changed over the years, and I'm writing up at least 3 different homebrew campaigns for different systems, but we don't need to focus on that. I mean, all in all, if that's your first experience and it's kind of your worst experience, that's a pretty great start to the hobby. Burnout is totally normal, especially if you're a new player and you're a DM on top of it, so I totally understand that. You did do something that reminds me of a mistake I made early on when I was a first-time DM. I was still really new to playing. I wanted to still play a really cool character concept I had in mind, and yeah, unfortunately I did too introduce a DMPC. I kept trying to get the party to like that NPC and hopefully adopt them, but the party for whatever reason just didn't like them. Maybe I was trying too hard, you know, to get them to tag along with the party, that they felt like something was up, like maybe it was like a twist villain or something. And I feel like that's a really good indicator of if they're a DMPC versus just an NPC that you like and the party also happens to like. You can totally have NPCs tag along, but the moment you say, hey guys, this guy has to come along because I like them, them, that's a sign that maybe you're a little too invested in this character and it's going to take away from the player agency at the table. I think it's kind of funny that Dave seems to be the only person you remember from this campaign, besides your own DMPC, which means that he really got on your nerves a couple of times. But overall, I think the first encounter with the gnome wizard sounded like a kind of a fun introductory dungeon, and the Kingdom of Doppelgangers seems like it could have led somewhere interesting, talking about like the identity crisis that a doppelganger might have, but it might have just been too serious of a campaign compared to the lighthearted campaigns you guys played in the past, and even how silly your first arc was. So I'm not super surprised that they ended up attacking the doppelganger. It seems like you really like world building, so that's great to hear. Usually when you get that DM bug early on, you just want to keep making more and more worlds, and eventually you hope to strike gold with a group that enjoys it. So let's see exactly what happens in the glory story. The Good and the Great, the Theros campaign. To give a timeline, I started working at Office Depot around a half a year or so into the pandemic. It had been a good minute since I had played Dungeons & Dragons as a GM, and hadn't played as a player, but some coworkers who were friends with my girlfriend at the time invited me to Session 2 to play. The GM had an idea already for my race, and I worked with him on the backstory in class aside from that. The campaign was set in Theros, and each player was a different creature instead of a regular race. One player was a Centaur Cleric, one a Satyr Druid with a Wolf Companion. I may be misremembering his class. My girlfriend was a Harpy Fighter Barbarian, and I was a Returned Necromancer. I won't delve too far into the details of my character, but for the sake of the story, I had no memories of my prior life or why I walked the plane, and I have a gold mask permanently attached to my face that was a representation of how I looked when I was a human. I was introduced to the party and was having a fine enough time. I was enjoying just being able to play, but I wasn't fully into the campaign yet in sense of engagement. That all shifted in one single line from the GM. The party entered a cave opening to some ruins. The GM describing it to the party as dilapidated and crumbling, the walls seemingly picked at, and paint was nearly completely rubbed away with unlit braziers on the wall. Then he turned to me and looked me dead in the eyes before proceeding with something along the lines of, "But you, when you walk into the ruins, you see walls glittering with gold and red paint and symbols. Braziers are lit above you as you walk, and everything is in pristine condition. And in the blink of an eye, it vanishes, and you see the dilapidated ruins everyone else sees." I was floored, chills and all. I was beyond hooked. It felt like the switch was finally flipped by a single GM. That does honestly sound like a beautiful hook, and a great way to get a latecomer to the campaign invested. The next few parts are more so focused on big story moments that sort of revolved around my character, but all of it was the GM's making, and I can't stress how amazing he was. If Matt Mercer and Brennan Lee Mulligan didn't exist, this guy would have absolutely been the man to look up to, and kind of is in my mind. Andrew, on the wild chance you're watching this, thanks for the campaign, and I'm sad it had to end so short-handed because of work. A session later, I believe, we ended up getting to the first city that any of us had been in that was under threat by a construct that came to life by some power we didn't know of at the time. We ended up defeating it and helping with a couple other tasks before being thrown a celebratory banquet. Lucian, my character, hadn't thought about food in however long, since he really couldn't eat with the mask, and so he decided to sort of step away from the party. Though, as he was scribbling down what he could from his memories into a notebook he revived with, he passed by some pastries that he used to indulge in during his living life. Without much thought, he stared at them and grabbed one, and without warning instinctively lifted his mask without a second thought and began to eat a pastry, causing the entire party, especially myself, to utterly freak out. For the rest of the night, my character, instead of being a bookworm, decided to just snack on pastries he used to love, though he never understood why since no memories, and offer them to guards and other city goers. Moving on to another session or two in, we managed to travel to a port city with a massive coliseum. The party made their way inward through the city looking for a handful of things, but came across a massive crowd surrounding one single man who was shouting and crying for help. The party made their way to the center of the crowd, to the man, and found that the sun above him was spinning and the shadows beneath him were dancing erratically, both defying the laws of science. It turned out that two gods were fighting for this man to become an oracle of some kind, but to do so he had to decide a moral choice. Either his son died in war for the lives of many, or the lives of many for his son. This is the part where I divulge a bit more details about the party. Each of us were given a god/patron that called to us to help with something. My character has no god, maybe. I had told the GM that my character was going to be an atheist, believing that gods don't do anything for us, so in turn, he was denouncing them. When he was killed by an unknown assailant or cause, he was approached by the Loki of the setting, from how it was described to me, and offered to get my character out of the underworld with some help. He ended up giving him the middle finger, and maybe got out by himself or with the hidden help of the aforementioned god. Now back to the situation before us. The centaur believed that his son should be sacrificed and save the lives of the many, a contrast to the satyr who believed that he should save his son and let him become a war hero. The two began to bicker pretty hard in character about what the man should do. This is where I came in. Amidst their bickering, I nudged the GM and said that I was going to walk up and say, there is always a third option, and toss a dagger at his feet. Okay, I was gonna let the atheist thing slide, but kind of an edgelord, man, come on. This caused the table to look at me in, from what I remember, complete shock, as Lucian hadn't really been a negative moral type of character, though they all loved it. Lucian got chewed out and ended up shrugging and letting the party discuss the matter without him, but still helped when the decision was made, as it led to an encounter. All in all, I really do miss this campaign. A few things cropped up at work. The GM, the centaur, and myself all worked at the same location, and they couldn't afford to give all three of us off at the same time anymore. So we sucked it up and sadly had to put the campaign on the shelf and in my heart. I want to thank you for taking the time to read this. I know it's awful word soup at times. Again, thank you so much, and may your rolls be natural 20s. If you ever feel like you're rambling when you submit a story to me at lootgoblinstories@gmail.com, I may occasionally trim out stuff that doesn't seem necessary to the story just to help it flow a little bit better, but I'm always reading and appreciating every word of it. I always find it sad when really fun campaigns end due to scheduling issues, because that's the one thing that communication at the table really can't help with. If you guys get along but you guys aren't all available at the same time, that just kind of sucks. For a lot of people, their first time playing is like in college, and while there's a lot of free time, one person's random class the next semester or someone graduating and moving away can be a death sentence to a perfectly ran campaign. It never hurts to keep trying, and I'm glad to see that you're working on 3 different campaigns that you hope to run one day. One of the reasons I really enjoy reading RPG horror stories and glory stories is there's always like a little interesting campaign plot or character idea that I can take and put in my own campaigns. I hope that a lot of you guys listen to these stories for the same reason. My advice for everyone out there is just to enjoy the games of D&D you get a chance to play. Even some campaigns where something's bothering you, there's still good aspects that you might look back fondly upon later on when you don't get a chance to play another game. If something's bothering you, by all means, bring it up, try to communicate, understand where they're coming from, and if everyone agrees that one person's a dick, yeah, probably kick them, right? Because no one really has time for that. We barely have time for good D&D. Thank you again for submitting your stories. I'm curious what everyone thought about the plot points in both these stories. I think they had a lot of cool things going for them. Definitely has me thinking of some ideas for a future campaign. One of the coolest things about recording these RPG horror stories is sometime in the comments people say, hey, this reminds me of my campaign, and then I see like several paragraphs of their own stories. So that's always really cool to see. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to help support the channel. I'll be putting my email in the description if you want to submit your own stories that I can read here on the channel. And as always, thank you for stopping by. I hope to see you in the next video. Farewell for now. I wanted to give D&D Dice a shout out, my favorite dice shop and where half of my paycheck goes to every month. They've got a lot of options, including their original 11-piece dice sets that they call the King of Crits series. Be sure to use the code LootGoblin to support the channel at dnddice.com, or you can just click the link down in that video description and it'll be added when you check out with your favorite dice. As an edgelord myself, my favorite collections are the Plague Doctor and Blood Hunter 11-piece sets, which I use alongside their Tomb of the Lich dice tower. Anyways, back to the video.